Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I analyse games using the mindset of speedrunning and look at the game from three perspectives. First, the casual experience, which is how most people first play the game. Next, the speedrunning experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. And finally, the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description and chapters on the video. Today we're playing Crash Bandicoot 2. Now I have done a video on Crash Bandicoot 1 on this channel, which I'll leave a link to in the description. I'd recommend checking that out first, as it talks about a lot of the foundational tech in this game. However, I'm going to re-explain just very briefly all the tech, so this video should still stand on its own if you're only interested in Crash 2. Now just before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video, consider subscribing to keep up to date, as it helps out the channel a whole bunch. So this game does away with a lot of the old Crash 1 stuff and sort of puts Crash in its usual format. You're collecting crystals and gems in warp rooms. You basically never see the first level of this game because you can skip it by skipping the intro cutscene, but essentially Crash has to go and get a battery for Coco, and then Cortex kidnaps Crash and brings him into the warp room. The whole premise of the game is that he's trying to trick Crash into collecting the crystals and Crash falls for it. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird premise. Anyway, here's Cortex kidnapping Crash, but then from this point is pretty much normal gameplay. 25 levels, gems and crystals. Good fun time. Now since Crash 1 we have a few new moves. We have the slide, which is really useful for going fast, and some enemies will actually require you to slide into them. For example, you got these frill neck lizard guys who you just need to slide into. If you spin into them, their necks will actually hurt you there. And you got these orange guys who you need to slide into because same reason really. You also have enemies in this level that will swap between needing to slide/spin them or jump on them. Yeah, they really lean into which type of attacks kill which type of enemies in this game. Crash also has this ground pound body slam ability, which you can do by jumping and pressing the slide button. Just a little side note, with the slide button you can use circle or R1. A lot of people use circle when they first play, but R1 makes it a bit easier once you get used to it. The ground pound ability is not really as exciting as the slide ability, since it only seems to come up in fairly special situations like this. The other cool addition is the addition of nitro crates. So in the original game you had your TNT crates, which will blow up on a timer, but these green nitro crates will blow up as soon as you touch them, making them pretty scary as part of the game. You might also notice there that I walked through an invisible wall in the video footage. That's one thing this game has a lot of, it is secrets. So that room, for example, you walk through the wall and you get to the end and get a lovely coloured gem as a reward. The game is absolutely chock full of these little secrets, and often they're kind of telegraphed into what you need to do. If an area looks kind of suspicious, you might want to go back and look for a secret. For example, you take the end of this level and you see those suspicious islands there. Well, you can basically walk back on those islands and get warped to a secret warp room. There's a few of these warps all around, and they do count towards getting your percentage on the end of the game, so you do have to find them all to 100% it. Getting through in this game any percent is fairly straightforward, but 100% I imagine would have been really confusing back in the day. Especially, you can get all the gems and crystals, but if you don't hit all those secret warps into these rooms, then you actually don't get 100%. Most secrets I can see they give you hints, but this one I'm not a huge fan of here. You literally just have to climb up this stack of nitro crates. Now when you spend the entire game learning don't touch nitro crates, it's not very intuitive to touch nitro crates. I suppose the way they hint you this secret is that those nitro crates weren't bouncing up and down, they were just stationary, so that's supposed to clue you into, well, you can jump on them. But I think that secret is maybe a little bit cheeky. Now, as with the last game, you do also get a gem for breaking all the boxes in a level. So if you manage to do that and get to the end of the level, a gem just will spawn. It'll also tell you a counter of how many boxes you still need to break when you get to the end of the level. The little frustrating thing is it doesn't tell you the counter of how many boxes you need mid-level, so you can't tell how many you're going for until you get to the end and see that number there. And just to throw a spanner in the works, in the first level you get a gem for breaking no boxes as well. And they have this cheeky box stack here that's really hard to get over without actually breaking any. I'm not sure how this is telegraphed in the game, I think it's a little bit cheeky. So if you are looking to 100% this game, I don't know, I'd probably just use a guide to figure out where all the gems and stuff are. A lot of the stuff is pretty cryptic in here. But that being said, the platforming and physics is really fun in this game, so it makes up for it a little bit. And I can imagine that playing this game back in 1997, it would have been really satisfying to find some of these secrets without really having the internet to look them up on. I suppose they are somewhat generous by having slots for all the gems and crystals you can get in the top of the levels, but you also can't see if there's a secret exit in a level up the top. So if you have missed one of those, then, well, you have to just sort of know where they are. A few more things. You do have these 2D sections just like Crash 1 had, although they're more integrated into the levels and you actually have to sort of do them in this game. But you can actually sort of go around in 3D and jump around a lot of the enemies and obstacles and stuff. It wasn't until Crash 3 that they sort of really locked you into the 2D only bit of the 2D section. Here you just jump around everything. Now the other thing I'll mention is the death routes. So these platforms will show up with little skull and crossbones on them, and they will only show up if you haven't yet died in the level. I remember coming across these, well, in Crash 3 for the first time as a kid, and I was so confused about how they actually worked, because I would just see these platforms that weren't there yet and presume that I didn't have a colored gem, and then I'd have a whole bunch of colored gems, but the platform still wouldn't be appearing. Well, pretty much because I was bad and couldn't get through the levels without dying. So that's another thing that can be a bit confusing about this game. There's only a couple death routes in there, but just be aware they can pop up. Usually at the end of the death route, you just get a reward like a gem or something. So overall, I would consider this probably an improvement to the first game. The difficulty is a bit more leveled out, all the new movesets really help. I think the warp rooms are a little bit less cool than the hub island from Crash 1, but whatever, what can you do? The boss fights are really cool as well. So overall, would recommend giving this one a go. I'm in a bit of a weird situation here, because I played the Crash games in the order Twinsanity, then 3, then 1, then 2, then 4. So I don't have a great deal of nostalgia for this one, but I can appreciate that it's technically quite good. I guess it's probably the best gameplay you get before hitting Crash 3, where there's, in my opinion, a bit too many of those gimmicky like vehicle levels, and it doesn't have some of the jank of Crash 1, which helps. Alright, now we're going to talk about the speedruns. So 100% interestingly is the first category for this game, and it seems to be quite popular to do 100% runs, so I'll focus mainly on that. Any percent is broken up into these two categories here. Now basically, the way that this works is if you grab the crystal in the level, and then you get a game over, you can still take that crystal out of the level, and quite often that's quicker than getting to the end of the level. Any percent when you're using game overs like this can be, I guess, maybe a bit monotonous if you're just doing it over and over again. So maybe that's why it's less popular than 100%, but I'm not entirely sure. Any percent as a straight category is quite glitched. I'll talk about that a bit later, but we'll focus on 100% first. Just before we look at the run, I will note that all these runs are on the PAL version of the PS2. This is released in Europe and Australia, and it makes me so happy when games are optimal on PAL, because it means that if I were to run it, I wouldn't have to fluff around with getting all these extra materials to set up NTSC. And the cool thing about the Crash series is Crash 1 optimally is run on Japanese if you want to run 100%, and then Crash 3 is optimally run on the US version. So no matter what region you live in, you can pick a Crash game and run it. And you'd be playing on the optimal version. So yeah, if I was going to pick up a Crash game, it would probably be Crash 2, because they don't have an NTSC PS2. The other small thing to note is that we're playing on PS2, which has the fastest speed loads, so emulators are going to be slower for this category. Well, pretty much all Crash games at that point. Alrighty, so let's talk about the movement tech in this game first. So, same movement tech from Crash 1, you want to run and jump. Basically, if you're jumping, there's something called zigzagging. Now, I talked about this a lot in the last video, but I'll talk about it again briefly now. If I jump, you can see that my velocity pretty much levels out at 7 there. And the XZ velocity is how fast I'm actually going. The velocity is how fast the game wants to set Crash's movement speed in this state. So mainly look at the top number there rather than the bottom number. Anyway, if I wiggle the D-pad left and right as I'm jumping, you can see the velocity will go up to 9 rather than 7. And that basically is because it counts diagonal as going left, right, and forward, but Crash hasn't turned around yet. So essentially it moves all that into forward speed there. So you can see just by moving left and right on the D-pad as I'm jumping, I'm going up to 9 rather than 7. Now, that is no longer the optimal movement in Crash. Usually it was jumping and spinning, which was good, but now it is sliding, because sliding, you can see, goes all the way up to 12. So So yeah, if you're sliding, you can see that velocity pretty much sits at 12. And I can tell you zigzagging does actually work when you're sliding. If I try and zigzag, the slide will actually go all the way up to 16, which is really cool to see. So yeah, zigzag during your slides, that's one thing that's going to save time. But basically, if you try and do just that, the optimal movement you would think would look like this. Slide, 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 slide. Which I can tell you right away is not the optimal movement in this game. You have a really big stop after you slide. So basically, there are two ways you might want to exit a slide. You might want to slide and then jump. It's pretty fast. Or you might want to slide and then spin. But you want to do like a variation on the spin. And it's called a neutral slide spin. And this is why I have the inputs displayed on screen. You should hopefully see that when I do a slide, I'm going to let go of the D-pad completely. And Crash just keeps spinning forward in the same direction. So this is called a neutral slide spin. It's a very useful piece of tech and is used just all over the run. And basically what that does is it makes your spin go the same speed that the slide was already going. I'll slow it right down so we can have a look. So you do a slide, you would ideally zigzag during the slide, and then you press the spin button. It's kind of hard to do this on slow speed. You press the spin button and then basically, third time's the charm. You press the spin button and then Crash keeps going at a velocity of 12, and then you would retain the slide afterwards. So if you chain those all together, it's going to look something like this. Like that, and then sometimes you would jump over a hole if you need to. Zigzag the slides if you can, but actually zigzagging the slides is pretty hard to do in practice. And that's the movement that's used all through this game. Now, one thing that I should mention are these Aku Aku masks. These do give you invincibility if you get enough of them, and invincibility is slow as heck. So let's see what happens when we get invincibility. We'll get this, and then immediately if we try and do our slide, that's going to come out at a velocity of 8. Now, neutral slide spins will still work, but they carry your velocity of 8. That's slower than 12, so yeah, don't get invincibility if you can avoid it. Now, if you do have invincibility here, it's probably not even worth sliding at some points. Basically, it's the same speed as running. Jumping is definitely slower, but actually crawling is the fastest speed of movement, because you can crawl and basically just zigzag there along with your crawl, which is really, really weird. That crawling is going to be fast, and that just goes to show you how slow invincibility actually is. For this reason, you'll find a lot of the 100% run is routed around avoiding Aku Aku masks. That can be done by using them for damage boosts, but also just by planning the levels in such an order that you're going to lose your marks at convenient times and not get invincibility. Now, all this movement tech actually does make it quite a demanding speed game. So neutral slide spins are pretty easy to chain together in a straight hallway like this, except if you're going around like curvy paths or have gaps in the floor or anything, they're going to be pretty difficult to deal with. You're more likely than not going to fall down a hole if you're trying to do this, and compared to the tech in Crash 3, which is neutral slide jumps, well, those give you a lot more mobility, whereas neutral slide spins pretty much lock you in. The other thing about letting go of the D-pad is your spin is locked into whatever direction your slide was going in, so you're pretty much going to be stuck there and you have to plan them out and space them out all in advance. Now, the other piece of tech that I'll mention are high jumps. So basically, Crash has a normal jump height, and you can tell from this hole, like you can't jump out of this hole and you're supposed to kill the enemies to get out. But if you crouch or slide into a jump, you're going to jump a little bit higher. Hopefully you can see Crash got a bit higher up the wall there than he did before. And if you crouch, jump, and then spin, you get a lot higher from your jump. So crouch, jump, spin, and you're going to be jumping up and be able to get out of that pit. That's used all over the place to get very, very high jumps. For example, this box here, you can just barely reach with, well, you probably can't actually, but you would have no hope of reaching it with this. You would get a lot closer. Actually, you can reach it, there you go. You get a lot closer with a crouch, jump, spin, for example. And we see an even bigger application literally just in level 2. You can see here we have no hope of hitting this red gem. You're actually supposed to come from above and drop down onto it from a secret path. But you can get pretty dang close by doing that with a ground pound. Now, if we combine this with going up onto this thing here, normally this would bounce us up, but if we spin just before we hit it, you can actually just walk on it like normally. You should be able to slide jump off this and get the gem. So if you have a go at that, basically you slide jump off that, and you try a couple times, and then eventually you can get it just like that. And that skips you having to fluff around with getting the secret exit and coming back through here. But this comes through to what I said before. If you don't get all the secret exits, you actually don't get 100%. So you still need to get the secret exit, even though you don't need to then come into the level and get this gem. Bit of a weird system. While we're in this level, a few more things I'll mention. We have cycles here, for example, these ones. They don't play as big a role as Crash 1 did, but they're usually global cycles, which means that they go from when the game powers on and they only reset if you die or something like that. And you've also got these ice physics, which are like super fun to use. Essentially, rather than going up to 12 velocity, you go up to 18 on the ice there. And then you can still do your neutral slide spins across. And you can actually chain together some like super fast movement across the ice. It's like very satisfying to do. Now, a lot of the runners also talk about something called wall boosting. I'll be honest, this is something that I'm a bit less familiar with myself. However, I do know that there's a lot of scenery jumping that I was doing when I tried to Taz this game. So like, for example, here, rather than getting stuck in the pit, you might go up here and then like slide off and use that to get across the pit without going really, really slow. Just little things like that can help. Also, if you need to get over a pit, usually it's a slide jump that is good, and then you would want to zigzag your jump like so. You can't necessarily slide spin over these pits unless you get really lucky with the wall spacing or the pit's thin enough. And runners will pretty intimately know which pits they can slide spin over versus which pits they really can't slide spin over. So while there's a lot of other context sensitive stuff, that neutral slide spin really is the bread and butter of speedrunning this game. And if you're playing this casually, I'd still recommend learning how to neutral slide spin. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. You just let go of the D-pad before the spin, and then you should be all good. It is a pretty fun game to play speed tech wise, even if you're not particularly good at speedrunning yet like myself. Also, if you have the scope to, I would recommend playing this game on PAL, especially if you're thinking of speedrunning it. Not only is the movement faster on PAL, but the body slam is much wider. Check this out. You basically break all the boxes around there without even like actually ground pounding the boxes. NTSC, it's a lot shorter, so that's another advantage we have playing on PAL there. Just be aware if you're playing on PAL, it runs at 50 frames per second rather than 60 frames per second. They sped up Crash to compensate for this speed difference, but they sped up maybe a little bit too much. Alright, now we're going to look at the 100% record by Super Boom Fan. So the first level there is Snow Go, and we're immediately going to see a piece of tech that I haven't talked about yet. And it's basically escaping a TNT's blast radius. So if you spin a TNT, it'll blow up, and then if you move away quick enough, the explosion actually doesn't hit you. So we saw one at the very start of the level, and we're about to see another one here. There we go. And that is easier said than done. It's pretty tricky to pull that one off. And now that I've talked about the main movement tech, there's not a whole lot new to say about each individual level, apart from just very minor strats here and there. There, for example, you have to backtrack to get a couple boxes, just because they only spawn once you hit the spawner further up. And Super Boom Fan's going to get a gem at the end of pretty much each level by getting all the boxes. Turtle Woods will be the next level here, and the gem to get Turtle Woods, as I mentioned before, you don't get any of the boxes, which is a bit weird. So Super Boom Fan gets to the end of this level using all the scenery to like jump around and stuff, which is really cool. And basically gets this blue gem for not getting any of the boxes, but then rather than finishing the level, just takes a death in this pit here. That brings him right back to the start of the level, and then he can just go and get all the boxes. So rather than needing to do 2 trips into this level, basically what they've done is, you know, they've done 2 gems on the same visit by using the death. Now, it doesn't work if you just go and get all the boxes and then come back to the gem. You actually have to take a death to get that, probably. We see Crash Dash coming up next, which has a lot of this wall boosting tech in here, for example, and really good memory of what's coming up in the level, because if you don't know what's coming up, you're more than likely going to hit a mine or something like that. I don't fully understand this wall boosting, but it seems pretty dang useful here. I assume it also helps him get over holes and stuff like that. If anything, my guess about why the wall boosting might be useful is because you're holding diagonal like when you zigzag and Crash is being forced to move forward by the wall. So it might be just like forcing Crash to do optimal zigzagging, for example. Now you'll notice Super Boom fans stop and watch the boulder destroy the nitros. And that's because only things that actually happen on screen actually happen in this game. So if you let the boulder destroy the nitros off screen, then the nitros don't actually get destroyed, which is kind of frustrating when you're playing. If you're playing 100% and you're missing a few boxes in this level, that is probably why. You've probably just outrun the boulder a bit too fast. Now we have Hang 8, and there are actually 2 gems in this level, one from getting all the boxes and one from getting to the end of this level before the timer runs out. Now, even if you could do both of these things, you can only ever do one of them at a time. It's a little bit weird. So basically what Super Boom Fam's going to do is get a few of the boxes near the start of the level, and then get to the end and get the timer gem at the end of the level, and then take a death and then come back and get the rest of the boxes. Similar to what we did in Turtle Woods, that very first level, to get 2 gems here. So there's the timer gem, comes back, and then cleans up the rest of the boxes. And that's why a lot of the boxes were gotten quite early on in the level, but then you can't really go into the bonus stage there while still having the timer run, so we're going to have to do that in a second trip. A lot of this death stuff is how we end up saving so much time in this run. It's pretty cool. Next up we have the pits, and this has like the classic Crash thing of having a branching path, and there are boxes on both sides of the path. So it's a little bit weird. You have to backtrack across both sides if you do 100% this level. Next up we have the boss, and there's really weird controls for getting into the boss. You stand in the middle, wait for Crash to give the thumbs up, and then you hit D up or D down depending which way you want to go. That took me a little while to figure out when I was first playing this game. Ripperoo's basically is an auto-scroller though. Alright, next up we have Bear It, and this bear does have a boost button on the circle, and basically what the tech is to boost and then jump pretty much right away here. Actually getting all the boxes can be pretty tricky, both with the ice physics, but also there's a whole bunch of sequences where you have to go like left, right, left to get boxes really quickly, and they are very easy to miss boxes when you do that. In Crash Crush, unfortunately, we have even more segments like this where you do have to wait for the boulder to visibly destroy Nitro before you can move on. And next up we have the Eel Deal. This level's really impressive because there's lots of things that can do a lot of damage to you very easily. Like there's the electric water, which hurts you pretty much immediately. And then there are those fans, which Boom Fan is just going through really well. With those fans, normally the method I use is to spin enemies into them, and then the enemies sort of destroy the fan blades. But Boom is just able to move through. This is the room that we saw before with that secret, and it's got Nitro all through it. And you basically... I guess that's supposed to hint you into what you meant to do, like, why would they put a room full of nitros? Better go through the back wall. This game is cryptic. There is a pretty cool strategy at the end of this secret hallway though, like after getting the green gem, Boom Fan just takes a death on this enemy, which is a lot faster than walking back through the hallway. And here's where you really start seeing that power body slam come in handy. That would have been so slow to do that section on NTSC. Next up we got Snowbiz and this little red gem path. Getting the red gem through the skip earlier in the game saved a lot of time, that skip that I showed off before. If not, you would have had to do some backtracking to come back to this level. Now this level Air Crash has some boxes on a secret path, so you have to come in through the other entrance. This means that on the first trip you can only really do this death path gem, and then you have to come back for a second trip later. But after getting the Death Path gem, they do take a death here with a really cool clip through that bit actually. Then to get back, basically we're going to go on the secret path here, which means you have to jump across those boxes there. That secret path I can see people finding. It's pretty like suspect, the boxes in the water there, so you might try jumping across and actually getting it. Now this is an example of what I meant about the percentages with the secret exits. This secret exit in Air Crash unlocks Snow Go, and this is how you're intended to get that red gem that was skipped before, but literally Boom Fan just exits the level straight away. Because all that's required to get the percent is that getting the secret exit from Air Crash, not actually going into that secret entrance in Snow Go. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Then we get another auto-scroller boss. Now I won't talk about every level at this point because we talked about the main types, but next time I want to talk about is Road to Ruin. You're supposed to come in through a secret path, but you can literally just make this jump across here. I think you can just do it with a slide jump with zigzagging anyway. It's really easy to get back into this secret path. But essentially with Road to Ruin, those boxes are on the secret path, and that was stopping you from 100%ing on your first visit. But now that Boom Fan has those boxes, they can just 100% anyway. Now this bonus stage has a really cool skip. You're supposed to spawn a whole bunch of boxes to allow you to cross the gap, none of which are actually breakable. But you can literally just make the jump with a very good slide jump zigzag movement there. And that saves a whole bunch of time in the bonus stage. We get Unbearable with another like cryptic bonus room. The bear falls through the bridge here, and you're supposed to just know to fall down the bridge there. Again, that was one of the more cheeky secrets I reckon they hid in this game. Also, at the end of the level, you're expected to just make your way back and make this hectic jump across the gap here. If you go and talk to this bear, it actually activates a secret warp there, which is kind of cool. We eventually have Bear Down. I found this one really difficult casually because of these guys who lift the boxes. Like, it's really hard to predict their cycles. They are consistent with what they do, but they psych you out a little bit like that one that didn't end up lifting it up. You get the secret exit on this level, which lets us finish off Air Crash. Next up we have the tiny boss fight, and I reckon this has like a really cool premise for like a boss fight. You basically just have to lure him onto these blinky red platforms and make him fall down. Yeah, I mean it's still an auto-scroller like what the other boss fights are like, but at least it's kind of fun. You have hanging out, and you can see one of the rare instances of actually getting invincibility here. You can see the benefits of like breaking the TNT instantly and also skipping this entire hanging section here. So it kind of makes sense to have the invincibility here, but you can see just how much you need for it to actually be worth you having it. Hanging out has another really weird secret where basically you fall down into a section around here and then just have to go backwards rather than forwards. That one's not too bad to find if you're just used to going backwards when you're looking for secrets and stuff. You can see there are a lot of damage boosting across the lava. You would think damage boosting would be bad, but realistically you do want to get rid of your mask so you're not getting too much invincibility, so it's pretty good. We have Digging It, which has a death path here, but you can see only getting 2 boxes on the death path and then making their way back, so it's not really worth going all the way across the death path there. It's a bit of a cheeky jump to get back, but there you go. Otherwise, you're going to have to do some really hectic backtracking through here to actually make it through. Now, if we look to the second place run, we can actually see a glitch that's not in the first place run. We break these 2 boxes up here, but then make our way all the way back to the bonus level here. So with this bonus level, usually what happens is it counts up all the boxes down the bottom on the screen there, and then it adds them to your total after you finish the bonus level. And you can see here 28 plus 26 there will give you 54 boxes, and this behaves perfectly normally. But the runner now falls into the pit before the boxes have finished counting down. This causes a glitch where these boxes here, these 4, are still spawned, and these 2 are still spawned. So there's something about it not saving the extra boxes that are broken, and essentially they've now duplicated 6 boxes compared to what they could normally have in the level. This can actually lead to a glitch where you get more boxes than there actually are in the level. I'm fairly sure if you go over the number of boxes, the gem doesn't spawn. I'm pretty sure you have to hit the actual number of boxes here. But basically what this means is this runner can skip the 6 extra boxes they don't want to get, which are too slow. And a lot of these are on the death path here. And they also skip one that was a bit high in the air and annoying to grab. Now, I'm not entirely sure why the world record doesn't do this, but they do mention that they don't get the Digging It dupe. So they do have to go for the boxes in the path here. But I guess it saves some time not having to backtrack back to the bonus stage, so there's a bit of trade-offs. There are a few levels where you can duplicate boxes like this, and there are some in Crash 3 as well, so it's kind of cool how the bonus stages break things like that. I will note that since they didn't do the dupe, they have to go back onto the death path and break more boxes as well, because you do actually have to break all the boxes in the level when you do it like this. There's also a gem on the death path there that they need to get to. So there's some extra boxes that need a breaking. Now, I'm not entirely sure why they didn't go for the box duplication here. They do mention it in the comment of the video, so they must be aware. My guess is maybe just the timing on it is quite tight, trying to die from the bonus stage, and if you mess it up, then you don't clone the boxes. Potentially something like that. Also, given you're backtracking in each case, whether you do the dupe or don't do the dupe, it probably doesn't save that much time doing it. Anyway, they grab the gem at the end of the level, but then make their way back. There's actually a secret exit in this level here. And the secret exit is just on this plant enemy. If you ground pound that, you'll kill the plant, and then you go through to totally fly. Now, although this run didn't do the box dupe in Digging It, they do a box dupe in Cold Hard Crash. So you'll notice all these boxes at the start of the level, they're going to break and get heaps and heaps on their counter. Next thing they're going to do is go into the bonus stage here, and the timing can be quite tight. You need to make sure you're making it out of the bonus stage pretty quickly. But anyway, you watch the boxes ticking down, and they do take a death before the boxes finish ticking down there. And this causes all the boxes at the start of the level to respawn. So now they get all these extra boxes. So this is much more powerful than the 6-box dupe from Digging It. This is like heaps and heaps of boxes that they got extra from this. Now, normally on the death path here, there's like a gem at the end. And if you want to make it back, you have to do some weird jump where you grab the gem and make it back. That is pretty annoying to do and also really slow. So by going through the death path and getting the gem and falling down, they skip some boxes, but since they duped a whole bunch of extra boxes, it really doesn't matter. They got so many extras that they could really just go through to the end and not really worry about going back and getting the extra ones out of the death path. And you can see here they skip a whole bunch of boxes because they've duped so many extras and get exactly enough to get the gem there. Now, I'll mention again, they do have to be really careful not to break any extra ones, which is why you can see them keep hitting triangle and make sure they got the right amount, 155. If you got 156, then it would say 156 out of 155, and you wouldn't be able to get the gem there. Next, we go through Behaving, and we have that really annoying secret exit where you have to jump on top of nitros of all things. Basically, they got a checkpoint before going into this secret exit, so they're going to get the gem and just die. Then they can just proceed through the level as normal. Alright, next we get into the 5th and final warp room of this game. There's a really cool glitch in this level where they get on top of the glass bit in this area. Just by jumping on top of that dude. That's going to save a whole bunch of time, because as you can imagine, navigating those enemies is not going to be fast. Alright, we also get these like rocket booster levels in this warp room. These controls are really annoying when you first play the game. I just could not get my head around them, but now that I've played Crash 2 quite a few times, I am pretty used to these controls, and they are kind of nice to use these days. This level has a really cool thing. It's sort of like a trope in Crash, but basically this blue gem path is going to take you across, and you're going to need all 5 colored gems to get across this path towards the very end. So yeah, you just go blue and then the next one and the next one and the next one. You just need all of them. So the green's next, and it just keeps going like that. And you think there'd be something cool at the end of that, but it's literally just another clear gem. And then you die and go back to get the rest of the boxes. This is a common trend with the Crash 2 speedrun, like you go on the secret path, get the gem, die, and then get the box gem. Now we have another rocket level, so more annoying controls. Or you would think that if it wasn't for this really cool skip where you can buffer through the rocket and just skip ever getting it, and then you can do this level completely on foot as Crash. I'm actually amazed that you're able to break all the boxes in this format, but I guess you just can, so really, really cool to see this, and a lot faster than trying to use the rocket to get through this area. There's some pretty dicey jumps to get some of these boxes though, like this one here. I imagine that would be pretty difficult. This level here is the classic level goes dark until you have the Firefly. They also like to put a lot of like ground pound boxes near the Firefly to like slow you down and stuff like that. And we get the final Cortex fight. Now this fight's a bit weird. It uses the rocket controls and it's almost like a race where you have to catch him and then attack him. Weird premise for a boss, but it goes by pretty quickly in the run. Anyway, timing stops when you beat Cortex, but this actually doesn't give you the best ending. To get the best ending, you just wait until you respawn after the credits, and then he tells you go and collect all the gems for 100%. Now, given we already have all the gems for 100%, you can just literally walk into where the Cortex fight was and you get the best ending immediately. There's something I really like about this ending, just like visually, like seeing all your gems lined up like that. It's just so cool. But yeah, that's 100% run. A really, really impressive effort from Super Boom Fan. I've done a little bit of running of this game, just seeing what the physics are like, and it is not easy to keep on track and like not fall into holes and stuff. Now, I won't talk too much about the middle categories because they're pretty similar movement-wise, only with this game over one, you're getting the crystal and then usually immediately gaming over as quick as you can. But I do want to talk a bit about any percent before we move on to Taz. So the premise of any percent hinges on the weirdest thing, and it's this jump counter that I've got displayed on the bottom left here. So you can see if I jump on this seal there, I get 1 jump, and if I make a chain, I get 2, but as soon as I land on the ground, I go back to 0 jumps. The purpose of this jump chain is to like give you bonuses. You can see I get 1 Wumpa Fruit, then 2 Wumpa Fruit if I chain the jumps. And then when it resets, but basically I'm always going to get 1, then 2, and then eventually you get like extra lives and stuff from doing this. I'll note that you can also jump on boxes and get this jump counter to go up, but realistically the boxes don't give you those extra bonuses. It's only jumping on enemies that do that. Now this on its own isn't too broken until you realize that you can chain these jumps together. It's landing on the ground that gets rid of your jump, but if you land in a spin and then duck, your jump counter will never go down. It just stays there, and then you can immediately jump up there and continue your chain as so. So you can extend this out quite a bit. For example, with these seal enemies, you can get a chain of 3, spin, duck, wait, and then you can get another chain of 3, spin, duck, wait, and you'll notice I got an extra life there, and then you can just keep going on like so. Now, nothing really interesting happens after you get 5 jumps. There's no more extra lives or anything like that. Basically, it just keeps going on like so. But something really interesting does happen if you get the jump counter way too high, like into the hundreds. You start getting crystals and gems and stuff like that. And the only thing that restricts you from getting into a boss arena is having a multiple of 5 crystals. Like the first boss needs 5, the second boss needs 10, and so on. So if you had a way to get 25 crystals, well, you could basically just go straight to the end of the game. And this is what any percent does. Alright, so Burgerlands 2 plays the game up to this point and goes on this jumpy box. Now, I'll reiterate, this box does not give you the bonuses. So if you just bounce on this for ages, it will not glitch out the game. You have to bounce on enemies. So basically, Burgerlands just jumps on this box for like a really long time. Then when they get to the end, they have to make sure they chain with like spins and stuff so as not to lose the jump counter. You can't see the jump counter on screen, obviously, but they're just jumping on enemies now. It makes like a little clicking sound whenever you get a crystal from an enemy, so that's how you know you've done it right. And basically it just keeps going on like this for a little while. Now, it's not like these enemies just give you a crystal or a gem. It's they give you particular crystals and gems from particular levels. And if you bounce on enough of them, you can get 25 and be able to beat the game. Well, you only really need 24 because you also bring the actual crystal from this level out as well. So you can see that they're not really lined up nicely. Burgerlands has done like a jump on the thing there to skip one of them. It wouldn't have been lined up right. And you can see a whole big table of this. Basically, there's like different things you can get from different jump patterns. There's actually this really cool guide which tells you basically what you get on every bit there. So you can see that it's sort of around the like 200 bounce stuff that you start getting crystals there. And it's in really weird orders, like all the levels are out of order and stuff like that. You also get gems from doing up to the 300s of bounces and stuff like that. Now, after Burgerlands does all this bouncing, you just have to watch Crash basically pull crystals out of his pocket for ages, because there's 25 crystals here. And by having all the crystals from the game, it essentially just becomes a boss rush at this point. So they just go up, beat all 5 bosses, and then the run's completed. Now you might be wondering, with this glitch that lets you get gems and crystals, can't you just use this to do 100% really quickly? The answer is absolutely yes, you totally could, but it's banned in 100%. They do have a 200% category though, which gets all these glitched crystals and gems to get extra percentages, and that you can see is a lot shorter than 100%, it's only 28 minutes. Alright, now we're going to move on to talking about Tazes. The Taz community is pretty active for this game. We have sort of the baseline Taz, like your normal any percent no item glitch. You've then got your item glitch, which is the one we were just talking about in speedrunning, and you've got your 100%, which is actually by Super Boom Fan, which I find really, really cool. There is one old publication here, which was by Mookie in 47, and this was made all the way back in 2010 before speedrun tech was really understood at all. This run didn't know about neutral slide spinning, so it literally just goes slide, 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 slide for all of its movement. I found that really interesting to watch back in what the optimal tech was for 2010. Now, Taz is going to look pretty similar to RTA, so I'll try not to talk too much about the Taz in this video, but basically we'll just talk about all three briefly. So Pirahiko's any percent Taz is a little bit more optimal than RTA in this sense. They're using this little roof bit to give Crash a short bounce, and that just allows the bounces to all stack up that a little bit faster than doing full bounces off boxes like this. You'll also notice Pirahiko's doing this in a much different spot of the level. This is further towards the start here, and that's probably just because this roof bit can clunk Crash down and make the bounces go that little bit faster. Again, I'll just reiterate that this bounce thing, that you don't get the crystals from bouncing on the box. The only purpose of bouncing on the box here is to actually hit up to the 200s in the bounce counter and get the crystals. You can see there Pirahiko's hit triangle so that you can see the crystal they've got here, and then they're going to get the rest of the bonuses off these seals here like this. Again, the majority of the Taz is literally just pulling crystals out of Crash's pocket. And given most of the bosses are auto-scrollers, the rest of this Taz is pretty much an auto-scroller. One of Pirahiko's strengths as a Tazzer I find has always been the play around, especially during boss fights like this, so it's still entertaining to watch even if it is a bit auto-scrolly with this kind of stuff. I'll also mention that this is about 20 seconds different to the RTA time, but it's important to remember that Tazzers can't use that fast to speed loading time. So realistically, Pirahiko is still a bit faster than RTA, even though this Taz is still pretty old. Alrighty, next up I'll just talk about the middle category Taz by Chef Steph. Chef Steph plays on PAL and starts through load game. Now I didn't mention this when we're talking about the speedrun section, but by starting from load game you skip the intro cutscene here, and you can just escape it with some precise movement, otherwise you get caught talking to Cortex there. You can just see the optimality in the movement there. Like you can see Crash wiggle during the slides, or zigzag we'd normally call it, and all the scenery sliding there. I actually tried to Taz this level and I wasn't able to save any time over Chef Steph, so it really goes to show this Taz is pretty good. They mention a few little things like sliding on ice is going to be faster, and also sometimes they're triggering lag intentionally. The game will speed up Crash with lag, but it doesn't tick down his slide or spin timer any more than it normally would. So essentially you can think of it as if your slides were going for a longer distance when you have lag on. This test has a really cool glitch. Crash turns Mini from one of these mini guns that, well, he's supposed to turn Mini, but basically he's supposed to die at the end, but you can escape it by spinning on the right frame. And now Crash is basically no height at all and can squeeze under a whole bunch of like piston and enemy hitboxes and stuff. And it saves a lot of time just not having to wait on global cycles or anything like that. Such a cool little addition to the test there. Aside from this, is all the stuff that I talked about in the Crash 1 video, the Z-axis optimization, boosting up boxes and enemies like that bird there. Really good stuff to optimize the Taz and stuff that you wouldn't pick up just by watching the gameplay normally. Chef Steph mentions an interesting thing about these bear levels. Essentially, cutting corners won't actually save any time. The bear is pretty much just on rails. So, like, you just want to jump at the optimal timing. They also note that you're invincible on the first frame of your jump, so they use this to save damage in some spots. It's a shame. It kind of makes this level almost like an auto-scroller bar just jumping perfectly. Unlike a level like Crash 3's Orient Express, which you can save a lot of time in by getting stuck in the collision. There is a pretty cool strat here in level 16. So you'll see damage boosting across here using the two Aku Aku masks there. But then you want to damage boost across the third section. Normally you'd use invincibility, but you can get out of bounds here and go completely on top of the section. Really, really cool part of the task to see here. Crash stays out of bounds for quite a while here and then just sort of pops out down in this area when done. Now, as we mentioned in RTA, you can skip the jetpack in the jetpack levels. It's a very precise way that you sort of have to jump around it there. But in the second jetpack level, there's no known way to get the crystal without actually having the jetpack. So instead, they do skip the jetpack and then take a death after hitting a checkpoint and then respawn with the jetpack in this level. Kind of a cool way to work around and get the crystal instead, while still doing some of the skip at least. Now, there is also the 100% Taz by Super Boom Fan, and it's really cool that the RTA run has actually done a Taz of this game. Not to mention they've done it on PAL and done all similar strats to what Chef Steph was using. There's not really a whole lot I can say more about this Taz compared to what I've said, but they really do show their absolute knowledge of this game and show what's possible when you have that knowledge from both RTA and Taz and put it together. Definitely worth watching this one if you get the time. Now, with all three of these Tazes, there is a potential way to save time, and it's called zip-zagging. So zip-zagging is a glitch that I found in the Crash series. It works on all three of the original Crash games, and you can use it to go very, very fast. You can do things like skip warp gates in Crash 3 and just zoom through pretty much all the levels. So in theory, all three of the Crash 2 Tazes could be improved with zip-zagging, although zip-zagging was known at the time of making the middle and longest category Taz, and so was chose not to use as a decision for entertainment. It kind of looks cool seeing it the first time, but when every level looks like this, it does get a bit boring and repetitive, so you can sort of see why they made that choice. I would really love to one day see the any% Taz improved through the use of zip-zagging, so that might be on my to-do list one day, but maybe not for a little while yet, because I don't really want to Taz those bosses in Crash 2. So I thought I'd just mention that zip-zagging is an option here that you could use to improve those Tazes, but they usually choose not to as a choice. Anyway, that's going to be all for this video, and thanks so much for watching.